They told me they weren't going to play my music again, but I see they did. So then I'm going to say a few words about that. You may wonder why that's my theme song. Obviously because Aretha's the queen of soul, and I want to pay that respect. But the other piece of that is about, all right. And the other piece of that is just about respect. If you think about the song, R-E-S-P-E-C-T, that is about us as county officials talking to each other, treating each other with respect. We don't have to all agree. We don't have to all like each other, certainly don't have to all love each other, but we can treat each other with respect, with civility, with courtesy, with consideration, with some honesty, and that is what we need to do. So that's the point of that theme song, so you're going to hear it a lot from me. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Hey, find out what it means to me. So you know why I'm here today. I have the honor to introduce the President of the United States. And let me tell you, and if you think I'm excited, my parents, who are long gone, are flipping and kicking their heels up above because they are looking down and know that their little girl is here on the stage with the President of the United States. So I am excited. So I'm going to share some of his background. I know some of you know this, but he began his career in public service in county government in the Newcastle County, Delaware Council. And when I was talking backstage, he said, hey, I'm a county guy. And he still is. He's one of us. The President understands county government. He went to bat for us securing the historic investments in counties from the American Rescue Plan. Don't forget, that was $65.1 billion direct to counties. That's on top of the earlier COVID relief packages. He's also with us every step of the way with bipartisan infrastructure law. You got old roads, bridges, all kinds of things that need fixing. That's going to help you do that. Additionally, county leaders share his goal to connect every single American to reliable, affordable, high-speed internet. With the laws passed in the last few years, we're going to be able to achieve that goal. We're pleased to hear President Biden discuss in his State of the Union address a commitment to tackling our mental health crisis. As we mentioned earlier, just as we mentioned earlier this morning, that's a national crisis. People at younger ages, broader, deeper, being affected by that. So we're going to get a handle on that with his help. This is an issue that affects every county, and we look forward to working with him on it. Thank you, President Biden. We're grateful to have a strong partner in the White House. And look at what we've had here at this conference. All levels of the administration, high levels, here with us through his support. So it is my honor to introduce to you our friend, the 46th President of the United States, the Honorable Joseph Robinette Biden.
Thank you, Madam President. Please, have a seat. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Denise, thanks for your leadership of this organization. You're right. I'm a county guy. You know, one of the things for real is that one of the things you learn when you start off, and I had the great honor of being a county council person in Newcastle County. We're like in miniature Illinois. We have one county has about 60% of the state's population. So a county commissioner or a county council person has a district that's, I think, 7 times larger than a state rep and 3 times bigger than a state senator. What I learned early on, if you're in the county, you got to go through someone else to get help. You got to go to the governor. You got to go to your state legislature. You got to go to the state senators. And guess what? I stopped that. No kidding. Because I'm telling you, one of the things that we expect people to do is we think that people are like us, very familiar with all the detail of, is this working? Very familiar with all the detail of how government works. They don't know whether there's a pothole in their front and their side street, whether it's a county, a state, they don't know who's responsible. And they come to the county all the time. At least that was my experience in Newcastle County. And when you don't have the same funding that you have for these other programs, you find that it's just hard. And one of the things that I found out early on was we always did better when there was direct funding for the things that related to the county. I think it's one of the hardest jobs. No, I really mean it. I'm not being solicitous. I think it's one of the hardest jobs in politics. How many of you knocked on a door and say, my name's so-and-so, I'm running for county commissioner, and look at you and go, you wonder what the county commissioner does, aren't you? Well, yeah. So I sincerely mean it. And so I want to begin by thanking you all for what you do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I ran for the United States Senate because being in the county council was too hard. Look, I'm glad to be here with all of you. Before I begin, I want to take a moment to say our hearts are with the students and the families of Michigan State University. Last night I spoke with Governor Whitmer, and the FBI and additional federal law enforcement are on the ground assisting the state and local folks, and 3 lives have been lost and 5 seriously injured. And it's a family's worst nightmare. It's happening far too often in this country, far too often. While we gather more information, there's one thing we do know to be true. We have to do something to stop gun violence ripping apart our communities. Ripping apart. And today marks 5 years to the day that 14 students and 3 educators lost their lives in Parkland, Florida. I met every one of those families, spent time with them all. And a lot of you here have to confront violence in your communities every single day. We took a big step toward passing the most significant bipartisan gun legislation in 30 years, ghost guns and other things, background checks, but there's a lot more work to do. And I'm committing to getting it done with all of you. Some of you know and I'm going to say something that's always controversial, but there is no rationale for assault weapons and magazines that hold 50, 70 bullets. We got it done once. We're going to do it again. But anyway, look, some of you know, as I said, I started as a councilman in Delaware, and the county executive in Newcastle County is here today, Matt Meyer. Matt, where are you sitting? Matt's hiding because, no, I'm kidding, Matt. Good to see you, pal. And Matt knows what I'm talking about. When people have a problem, they've got your number, they knock on your door. Not only you, but your spouses can't go to the grocery store, the gas station, can't show up without, can you fix my such and such? Well, I've always had enormous respect for the job you do. You're the ones who make people make sure everything gets fixed. The libraries stay open late so kids can do their homework. The sewer system is backing up into the creek and their basements, so you make sure that your public health department runs smoothly, that your communities are meeting the needs of growing and changing populations, that your residents have access to affordable housing, that you're investing in public safety. They're huge responsibilities you have. They touch every aspect of people's lives. And when your constituents call needing help with a state problem or a city problem, you take the call and you get it done. You end up calling to make sure you find out how to get it done. Simply put, you get things done. You're used to getting things done, fixing problems. And that's because you know the measure of success isn't how partisan points are scored, but it's how you fix the problem. Can you fix the problem, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent? We're often told that Democrats and Republicans can't work together. And, you know, there's always been competition, but in the last 10, 12 years, it's been particularly tough. But as I told my friends in Congress in my State of the Union address last week, I believe people sent us a clear message in this off-year election. Fighting for the sake of fighting gets us nowhere. We're here to get things done. That's why we got elected. That's always been my vision, and I really mean it's always been my vision, and I know it's yours as well. Over the past 2 years, we've been delivering on that vision. When I came to office, the pandemic was raging and our economy was reeling. But together we acted. Less than 2 months after we took office, the American Rescue Plan led to the fastest economic recovery of any major economy in the world. And I know that at the beginning of the crisis, like you did, that strengthening state and local governments was the key to our recovery. But when the CARE Act was passed, before that, before I came into office, just before it, under the previous administration, some of you had to go to your state legislatures to get permission to use the money that was in the act. I used to be in your shoes. Only 120 counties in the United States of America got help in that CARES Act. There was a lot of money, but only 120 counties. When I signed the American Rescue Plan, it sent $350 billion for the first time in history to every state, city, and county in America. We made sure all of you, over 3,000 counties got direct funding because I know we empower you directly. You get the job done. 3,000 counties. That money helps shore up your budgets, avoid painful layoffs, put cops back in the beat, firefighters back in the job, teachers in the classroom, nurses in the emergency rooms. And it worked. Since then, because of you, we've created 12 million jobs. Just 500,000 alone, last month alone. We've now created more jobs in 2 years than any administration ever created in a 4-year term. And folks, the unemployment rate is 3.4% at a 50-year low. We've seen record small business applications. And by the way, every time someone makes an application for a small business, that's hope. It's hope, expressing they got hope they can get something done. We urge you to use the rescue plan money to make communities safer, invest in affordable housing, get small businesses back on their feet, train your workforce, and you did. In Travis County, Texas, in Pierce County, state of Washington, you're addressing homelessness by increasing affordable housing stock, partnering with nonprofits to get the root of the problem. Ramsey County, Minnesota, in Ramsey County is addressing worker shortages in child care and health care by training residents to become nurses and licensed child care professionals. The American Rescue Plan also provided $12 billion to address mental health needs arising from the pandemic. I know that addressing mental health is a priority for so many of you in this organization. And by the way, one of the things that I wrote down, I had lunch with the Vice President today, and I keep little note cards about what I think we have to do. And I said, we have to pass legislation on the damaging technology that's having an effect on our kids. We've got to change the way the internet works and the way people are able to use our children. It's got to stop. Milwaukee County is using rescue funds to mentor kids involved in the criminal justice system. LA County is offering job training for kids with vulnerable populations. With the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the most significant gun safety legislation in 30 years, we're providing another $10 billion to prevent violence and threats resulting in human trauma. $2 billion of that is for your young people in particular, to pay for things like school counselors. And as part of the Unity Agenda in the State of the Union, I call for a surge in resources to deal with the fentanyl epidemic. that I know is devastating many of your communities. We now have a record number of personnel working to secure the border. We've now seized over 23,000 pounds of fentanyl just in the last several months. But if we're going to have the strongest economy in the world, we have to have the strongest and best infrastructure in the world. We used to be number 1 in the world. Now we're moving to number 14. And China used to be number, I think, 10 or 11. Now they're number 2. Folks, that's why I asked Congress to pass the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment Act, larger than any investment made in infrastructure since Eisenhower's interstate highway system. A number of Republicans came together with Democrats to help us get it passed. And we're rebuilding the country through the bipartisan infrastructure law. In your counties, we're investing in roads, bridges, airports, public transit, water systems, high-speed rail, so much more. In Maricopa County in Arizona, we helped build a new bridge over the Holly River. Look, in Washoe County in Nevada, we're spending $89 billion to add several lanes to the US 395. In Maryland, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, replacing dirty diesel buses, which are bad for the health and the environment. With the leadership of Vice President Harris, we're partnering with you to deliver affordable high-speed internet to every single household, so no parent has to sit in a McDonald's parking lot, for God's sake, so their children can connect to the internet to do their homework. We've already added 16 million more households to the affordable internet. We're just getting started. We're also making the biggest investment ever in climate through the Inflation Reduction Act, creating millions of good-paying jobs, investing in fence-lined communities that have suffered the most as a consequence of being smothered by pollution. Think of Cancer Alley in Louisiana, or as the Delaware delegation can tell you, Route 9 in Delaware. They're going to be the first ones to benefit. We passed the CHIPS and Science Act, which has led to a commitment of over $300 billion in private investment in manufacturing. We're opening factories in your states to build semiconductor chips and electric vehicles and advanced batteries that's going to power those vehicles. In my first 2 years in office, we've created 800,000 manufacturing jobs. Where in the hell is it written to say we can't lead the world in manufacturing again? Where does it say that? For decades, we imported projects and exported jobs because cheaper jobs overseas. A lot of companies left. How many of you come from areas where you used to have a factory of 400 or 500 people and everything got lost? They just hooked up and took off overseas. What happens? It leaves the community devastated. They lose hope. How many of you have heard someone say to you, well, my daughter came up to me and said, I can't live here anymore, Mom. There's no jobs. I got to move. Now America is exporting products and creating jobs at home. Today's report on inflation shows the good news is that inflation in America is continuing to come down. It's fallen 7 straight months. There's more to go. Food prices at the grocery store are coming down. Gas prices are down $1.60 since their peak. Real wages for working Americans are up over the last several months. The living welcome breathing room. Melissa, my dad would say, all I'm looking for, Joey, is just a little breathing room at the end of the month. It's a little breathing room. Have a little bit left over after I paid all my bills. We're seeing this progress even as unemployment remains at a 50-year low. We're going to have bumps in the road still. There's still more work to do as we make this transition more steady, more stable growth. And there could be setbacks along the way. That's why my unwavering focus is on continuing to lower costs for families, rebuild our supply chains, invest in America. Today's data reinforces what we have made historic progress, and we're on the right track. And now we need to finish the job. We're building the economy from the bottom up and the middle out. So every county across America, not just as works on cost and the coast-to-coast areas, but in the heartland. My plan I refer to as a blue-collar blueprint to rebuild America. We're creating good jobs you can raise a family on, and most don't require a college degree. jobs that people don't have to leave home in search of opportunity. Let me just give you a few examples. Intel is going to invest $20 billion on 1,000 acres outside of Columbus, Ohio, that I refer to as a field of dreams. They're going to build 2 fabs, they call them, factories that manufacture semiconductors, which, by the way, the semiconductors were invented in America. You got it? Invented in America. Now we used to have 40% of the world's chips manufacturing. We're down to 10% because we forgot. Not anymore. Intel's going to create 7,000 jobs building in that field of dreams, 3,000 working on the fabs, 4,000 building the facilities. The average salary in one of those factories is going to be roughly $130,000 a year. And you don't need a college degree. You don't need a college degree for that. That's building America from the bottom up and the middle out. But there's $300 billion being invested. And now we're doing all this and so much more while cutting the deficit more than $1.7 trillion in 2 years, the largest deficit reduction in American history in my first 2 years in office. Largest. You may have seen the spirited debate in my State of the Union address. It was kind of fascinating. I felt like I was back in a playground. Some of my Republican friends in Congress, not all of them, but some of them, have been threatening to hold your economy hostage if we don't cut Medicare and Social Security. When I called them out on this in the State of the Union, it sounded as though they agreed right then and there to take those cuts off the table. I sure hope so. If that's true, I'll believe it when I see it, but I hope that's true. That's also when we see whether or not we're going to plan to cut Medicaid and other programs critical to people. Most of you have finally reached the point where your revenues are climbing and your budgets are stable, most of you. And so I know that you share my concern that some in Congress are putting that progress at risk by threatening to have America default on its debt, which would be catastrophic for counties and the country. In fact, even coming close to default will raise borrowing costs, make it harder to finance key projects in your communities. Ironically, nearly 25% of the entire national debt, which took 200 years to accumulate. So the national debt is 200 years old, accumulated over that period of time. 25% of that debt was added in the previous 4 years of the last administration. 25% of the 200 years of debt. So I met with the Speaker of the House. He's a decent guy. He's got a tough job. He made it real clear to me what he wants to do. He says he's not going to raise taxes at all on anybody, and he just wants to cut programs. So I suggested instead of making threats about the debt ceiling, which would be catastrophic, let's just lay out our budgets. I'll lay out mine on March the 9th, exactly what I want to spend, who gets taxed, who doesn't get taxed, what programs get cut, what programs get added. And he should do the same. We can sit down and go, I mean it sincerely, go over it, see what they want to cut, see what we want to cut. But here's the thing. If you add up the proposals my Republican friends in Congress have offered so far, just so far now, legislation, they would add another $3 trillion to our debt over the next 10 years. Let me be specific. Here's how they do it. They made it clear in legislation introduced to the investment we've made to crack down on tax cheats, billionaires and millionaires. The CBO says by doing away with those extra agents, we're going to cost the American public another $114 billion in lost revenue. They finally have made Medicare negotiate the drug prices. Well, they want to repeal that. They want to repeal the prescription drug savings and increase subsidies to big pharma. Right now, for the first time in history, and I've been trying to do this for over 30 years, we pay the highest prescription drug cost of any nation in the world. Any nation in the world. No one else is close. So what do? We passed a law that said that in order to be able to, the Medicare, which pays billions of dollars in Medicare bills for everybody, Medicare should be able to negotiate drug price. Say, we will only pay you so much for that drug if you want to sell the drug to Medicare to give to people. Well, guess what? It passed. Now, if that gets cut, and by the way, you know, it's like, you know, when we talked about this bill being passed, everybody said, yeah, and the promise that we're going to bring down drug prices and insulin. How many of you know somebody who has diabetes and needs insulin? Yeah, a lot of you do, a lot of people. Well, guess what? Those folks who need it, including 200,000 kids, are paying somewhere between $400 and $600 a month. You know what they're paying now as of the 1st of January? $35. And we're not cheating anybody. You know how much it costs to make that drug? $10. Package is another $2. It was invented over 100 years ago. The man who invented it didn't even want to put a patent on it because he wanted to make it available to everybody. Well, guess what? It's coming down. Guess what's going to happen? This year, the total amount of cost of the drugs you have to pay for that you need is now $3,800. Next year will be $2,000. You say, what difference does that make, Joe? Who has those kind of bills? Anybody like my family, you know how much cancer drugs cost? $10,000, $12,000, $14,000 a year. Nobody on Medicare will have to pay more than $2,000 a year for all the drugs they consume. Nobody. And guess what that's doing? That's saving the taxpayers $159 billion a year. They're paying that much less out to Medicare recipients. Well, folks, you take that away, it raises the deficit $159 billion. We passed a law to make sure corporations pay at least 15% tax. Now, I come from the corporate capital of the world, Delaware. No, not joking. More corporations are incorporated in Delaware than every other state in America combined. The idea, for example, one of the reasons I was able to cut the deficit as I was able to do and have these programs available was simple. We said the 55 corporations of the Fortune 500 who made $40 billion in 2020 had to pay at least a 15% tax. That's less than a nurse pays, a police officer, a street cleaner. Well, guess what? It allowed us to pay for all this. 15%. And like I said, if you're a cop, you're paying 10% more than that. Look, they want to repeal, again, that tax. They want to repeal the corporate minimum tax, which is 15%. If they do that, that'll add $222 billion of the deficit to repeal will be passed. They want to repeal the 1% surcharge for stock buybacks. Let me explain. I didn't know years ago what a stock buyback was. Well, it was a simple proposition. If, in fact, one of the big mistakes I made as a U.S. Senator, and it was well-intended, like a lot of things, like the nuns used to say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Well, you know, one of the good intentions, I voted with Bill Clinton, who's still a good friend, to say that no corporate president could make more than $1 million from the profit of from the corporation they ran. Well, that incentivized everybody to get paid by stock buybacks. So I think it's 91% of all corporate execs are paid in stock. Well, what's the one way to increase your salary? Buy back your stock. It raises the price of the stock, raises the value. And the shareholders and you do well. But guess what? You end up not investing in the thing you're engaged in. For example, corporate America, you had the oil companies. You know how much they made in profit this year? $200 billion in the middle of an energy crisis. Because they bought back their stock and they're not investing in refineries, repairing them or maintaining them. Now they're saying, and it's a legitimate argument they make, they say, Biden, you want to go you want to go green, and in 10 years we won't need this. Well, guess what? We're going to need oil for a long time, and gas for a long time. It's not going to all go away. But look at all the refineries that are closed because they're not investing in the nature of the business they're involved in, as one example. And so what do? We added a % tax on a stock buyback. If you eliminate that, it's going to cost $74 billion more in the deficit. They want to extend the Trump tax cuts from the previous 4 years, which cost $2.7 trillion in the deficit. Extend it. And guess who gets it? Y'all don't. The point is this. I believe we can be fiscally responsible without threatening to send our country into chaos. I believe it because we've been doing it. When I introduce a budget 3 weeks from now, a few weeks from now, I guess March 9th, well, you're going to see we'll cut the deficit by another $2 trillion in the next 10 years. And I'll lay it out in detail. But here's the bottom line. I'm simply not going to let the nation default on its debt for the first time in history. America is a nation that's paid its bill for the last 200 years. And over the past 2 years, we passed historic amounts of significant legislation that actually grow the economy, increase jobs, increased access to health care, reduce the cost of prescription drugs. We're on our way to building the best infrastructure in the world again. But as all of you know, the work doesn't stop here. So let's finish the job. I'm really optimistic for the year ahead as we implement the laws we've already passed. If we didn't pass another single thing, the things that are going to take place by implementing just the laws we passed last year are going to deliver real benefits to people that they're going to feel in their everyday lives. Just like people now understand, since the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, seniors are only going to pay $35 for a prescription of insulin. We're seeing the effects. It's going to change people's lives. This is the work we're going to continue to do together, Democrats and Republicans, and we're proving in every county in America, our best days are ahead of us. They're not behind us. This is the United States of America, for God's sake. There's nothing, I mean this sincerely, there's nothing we can't do. We're the only nation in the world that's come out of every crisis we've ever met stronger than we went into it. The only nation that's ever done that. We're the only nation in the world because we have a resilient population. America never gives up, never steps down, never backs away, never stops. I mean it. We have an incredible country, and there's nothing beyond our capacity if we do it together, and we're looking to the counties to be the key to getting it done. God bless you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And may God protect our troops.